Good afternoon. This is Adam Small, and this is the Agent Sauce Real Estate Marketing Podcast. With me today, as always, is Doug Carr,
Hello, sir.
and we've got intern Austin.
Hello.
How you guys doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am a robot.
Yeah.
How are you today? How you doing today, Doug?
I'm ready to go.
Ready to go? Ready to
Yep.
leave? We
No,
done?
no,
We done? Oh, you ready to go with the podcast?
Podcast,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
I love podcasting.
I mean, okay, cool. So, hey, listen, today I was thinking that, photography and imagery for real estate would be a really good topic, something to talk about. And, kind of want to preface this a little bit. We are no experts in how to take a photograph, but, from a marketing perspective, I think we've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I agree.
So you agree you're not an expert in photography?
Yes.
Okay. How about you,
Absolutely.
Austin? Are you an expert?
Definitely not an expert.
Well, you had that photography class in college here, right?
Yeah,
So-
just recently.
But still not an expert.
Yeah, still not an expert.
Okay.
You know what? I would say this. Like, I don't know that photography is like one of those things that you can just go learn. Like, you can learn the navigation and menus but you still have to have kind of a creative eye.
And it's really a skill that you have to practice.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing because there's a lot of technical stuff behind it, with ISO and shutter speed and depth of field and all that. And you can learn the technical side. You can say, well, if I do this, then that's going to impact the image like this. Doesn't mean you're still going to end up with a good image.
Yeah, right. Right.
So as much science as there is behind it, and there is truly a lot. There's still a lot of art.
Totally
to
agree.
It, So and without that art, it just doesn't matter. You might as well be a police officer taking pictures of the crime scene. Because really all you're doing is collecting data, right? As opposed to creating something artful, right?
Wow, we went dark fast.
Well, you know me. All right, so realtors can use photos in a lot of places, right? Right off the top of my head, you got websites, which is obvious. You've got their profile, their portrait photos, which they plaster everything that they market with themselves because it's part of their brand. And then you've got virtual tour photos for the listings themselves, and as well as even social media, which is another location from a marketing perspective in which to use photos. Those are probably the big ones.
Yep.
Obviously print and that sort of stuff comes into play as well. But I think most of what you're seeing these days from real estate agents is digital, email marketing and stuff like that. So let's just talk about, portrait photos are pretty standard. You got a professional photographer taking those. So let's not really talk about those. Let's talk about virtual tour photos, okay, for a moment.
Oh, nice.
So virtual tour photos, those are the photos of the listing, right? And agents can take those themselves. A lot of agents do, and a lot of agents pay for those to be taken as well. They pay a professional photographer. A lot of times what they'll do, now they're getting into the not just panoramic, but 360 type photos as well as aerial photos, right? Yeah. Aerial photos are somewhat new. They're drone footage and that sort of thing. Doug, what do you see coming with that?
Well, it goes back to quality again, right? That when you see a really great, well-lit photograph that has rich colors in it and everything else, your eyes are really drawn to it. And what I see a lot that concerns me is that real estate agents take photos to take photos, but they're not thinking about whether it's eye-catching or not. And so even the angles that they're taking the photos at, the lighting that they're using, if it's drones or aerial, it's the camera might be a cheapo, and so a lot of the problems that I see is that a good photo is worth the investment.
Right.
And a crappy photo you don't even pay attention to, that
you just skim right through it.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's probably the biggest thing that I see is whenever we get clients and bring in a professional photographer, everything changes. Like the whole site pops better and everything really stands out.
It just adds a nice layer of polish.
Yeah. And then when people share it on social media, it's really much more attractive, and then it's engaging too, especially if it's a photo of like you or 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 something, because then people see you,
Right.
and and they're not seeing the 1984
Version of you?
heavily photoshopped version of you.
Right,
They
right.
see you, and so it's an instant like, cool. That's the guy from the photo, or that's the lady from the photo.
Yeah, one of the things that I see with virtual tour photos, you're really talking about composition of the photo, making sure that what's in
Oh, that's
big.
That's one of those big words.
high dollar word there, right? But you're talking about composition. It's angling it and setting it so that everything looks just right and really displays the room well, right?
Right.
One of the things that I see in virtual tour photos, and I see a lot of them because we offer virtual tours as one of our service, is really, it comes down to what you would call poor composition. I would call it poor judgment, because it's people taking pictures of the bathroom with the toilet seat up and spots all over the mirror, or holes in the roof and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Where really and truly the intent of any sort of photo of a listing from a virtual tour perspective, the intent is really just to show enough to get the person interested in the listing and then have them drive out and look at it. Because what will happen is you put all these photos of this tour out there, and really if you put too many out, what happens is you're allowing somebody to find something wrong with the home and say, I'm not gonna overlook that, so I'm not even gonna look at the house. They find a problem with it and they move on. Whereas if they came out and they toured it in person, they might be there and going, look, I really love this house. There's a problem with the roof here or whatever it is, but I can overlook that, or you can get that fixed and then I can buy the house, So I think that photography, not only the elements of it, the composition and all, but also the judgment of what to put out there to entice somebody to come in is just as important as what you're actually taking.
Well, and I think, if you looked up, it's not the topic today, but like those staging companies, right?
Right.
That's
right.
exactly what they're working on, is they want to stage your house and make it look in such a way that it's really appealing.
Right, they're composing the house so that it's
Yeah.
the most possible appeal to a buyer,
Right.
So this could be your home, right? So, beyond virtual tours, social media is becoming really heavy. I read somewhere that there's more photos uploaded in like a minute or an hour or something than have ever been taken in the entire history of the world every day now. Every whatever that time frame was, it's just phenomenal.
That's nuts.
So I should probably look that stat up so that I could say it properly, what the actual term was. But social media, the importance of photos on social media, what do you see happening there, Doug?
One is size makes a big difference, and what I mean by size is the dimensions of it. So like on Twitter, when you actually share an image, if you shared like a square image on Twitter, it actually isn't showing a square image unless you opened up that tweet. It's just going to show a wide view, and it's probably going to pull. I think it pulls from the center of the image, and so if you've got elements on top and bottom, like it's a person's head on the top, or something on the bottom, that's going to be missed in that. And so so that's most of it with social media. Is like Instagram is a perfect square, so you want to make sure that actually, I'm lying. Instagram, you can share other dimensions now, but typically people share a square image on it. Facebook is a really wide image as well.
Right, it's like a 1.9 to 1 ratio on Facebook.
Yeah, and so those are the things that we look at, is that just because you share it in one place doesn't mean that it's going to work well in another.
Right. So how about how do photos impact the visibility, viewability, and interactions on social media itself? I mean, it's nice, you got a great looking photo, it's out there, but don't photos have a huge impact on the interactions with the social media posts?
Yeah, the click-through rates on photos with people are huge.
So photos with people are much more interactive.
And people looking at you.
Really?
Yeah. They've done a lot of testing on that to, images with or without people in it. And ones with people smiling, looking at you, tend to garner a lot more attention, because the first thing we do is look the person in the eyes.
Right. What about posts with photos versus posts without photos?
Say that one more time.
Posts with photos versus those without photos. Is there a higher interaction rate on those with photos?
Huge. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Huge. Huge. Yeah.
Having to drag it out of you, man. Come on.
Yeah. The not just from a open standpoint, but also from a sharing standpoint.
Oh, okay.
People, I don't know what the percentages are, but I'm sure it's in the 90s. That basically people share photos.
So that photo is just that much more important, right?
Absolutely.
Austin, you got anything to say about that?
Well, I mean, it goes into the saying, "A picture's worth 1,000 words." So there's
now
obviously
it's a picture's worth 1,000 shares.
Yeah.
We could hope, right?
Do you make these jokes up as you go?
I do. I'm a dad. What do you expect, right? It's dad
he had
jokes,
them
right?
pre-planned.
I had pre-planned, yeah. So, hey, I looked up the stat I was trying to think of, right? And here's basically what it is. In 2014, according to Mary Meeker's annual Internet Trends report, people uploaded an average of 1.8 billion digital images every single day.
Wow.
That's 657 billion photos per year. And another way to think about it, and here's my stat, is every 2 minutes, humans take more photos than ever existed in a total of 150 years.
Wow.
So every 2 minutes is now equal to, and this was 3 years ago, right? Every 2 minutes is now equal to the totality of 150 years before.
That's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah.
That's a lot of data. That's a lot of data. But it goes to show that, there's a certain fascination and tie to photos from an emotional perspective, right? So, all right, email marketing photos. What do you think about that, Doug?
I like them.
Me too. They drive interaction, though. They
everything is, I mean, I always say you don't want to just put any visual in there, but something people understand images, and I think it's actually within microseconds they can take an image and get a perception from it, whereas text you have to read it. Right. And even when you're reading it, you don't necessarily get the sentiment. And then the other thing is our brains don't actually memorize words. Our brains memorize images. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the science behind using photos and imagery and everything else is that if you wrote an article and had a really, really great photo above it, so maybe it was a photo about a baby, that was born premature and was a miracle baby or something.
Right.
And then there was a picture of the baby. People would remember the story a lot longer because of the picture than without the picture. And so there's been a lot of studies done on that just, it's an instant thing that as soon as you see a photo, you draw a conclusion, an opinion, and a memory, based on that. And so that's why images are so important in our advertising and marketing, is that we want people, that's why every single blog post I do, every single podcast I do, everything has an image along with it. And it's to try to get people to make an immediate
emotional connection to it. Right. Interesting. Austin, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it right on the head. Anything that you can do to help someone remember your posts a lot easier is definitely going to be helpful.
Okay. All right, guys. Hey, any other thoughts on photos and imagery in real estate, Doug?
Yeah, there's a lot of mixed arguments about whether to use stock photos or not. And my feeling on it is that there's some really good stock photos out there. Mm-hmm. And so I disagree with people that say kind of all or nothing.
Right.
I do think there's opportunities for people that, or maybe the mistake that some people make is that they go hire a photographer and they get 10 pictures from that photographer. Mm-hmm. And I think nowadays you should talk to a photographer and say, hey, let's do a shoot for like 2 hours. And if you could give me 100 photos that I could use online and make sure you get the photographer's permission and everything else,
right,
I think you should be writing that into every engagement. So even if it's an office photo, get them to take pictures all over your office, of the desk, of your laptop open, get them to take photos of everything. And now you've got a collection for your site that it's all going to look visually the same, and it's all going to look good.
Same feel to it, right?
And I think that's one of the mistakes that I see people make too, is that. So we have a client that's a data center, and we had a great photographer go out there. He took out like 1,000 photos, And now every time we write a blog post, we're using a photo from their, from their actual data center.
Right.
And you can see the huge difference between that website and the other websites out
Right.
there.
Well, the consistency of the photos, the look, the feel, or whatever, really lends to, again, part of the polish of it, as well as just the ongoing feel of the entire site itself.
Yep.
And, you probably use those in email marketing and other publications as well, right?
Yep.
So it keeps that kind of brand consistency across the board, right?
Yeah. And like I said, you just want to make sure you get the photographer's permission to use them.
Well, and that's actually a really interesting point, a really important point to talk about is licensing, right? You talked about stock photography, and a lot of times online it can be limited to so many views, that sort of thing, or downloads, or if you're a service like ours where you actually redistribute the images, you want to make sure that you have the right to use those. And from our perspective, we redistribute a lot of images, so we look for licenses that allow us to do that. But we've known some people that have on their blog post just found an image on the internet and decided to use it, and then a couple years later they get a nastygram from an attorney or something, and if they're lucky, they just have to take the image down.
Right. If they're lucky.
If they're lucky. If they're not lucky, then they get hit with a threat of a lawsuit, or you pay up, or we're going to take you to court for a copyright violation.
Yeah, and they rake you over the coals with that. They want here pay us whatever $1,000. I think one of our clients, one of the guys took a Google image search, and thought it would be great for his post, and it wound up being a Getty image.
Right.
And Getty wrote him a nastygram and said $3,000.
Yeah.
And they paid the $3,000 because it would have been cheaper.
It's cheaper than going to court, right?
But it's a terrible practice out there, and even if you went to Google and you hit the in the advanced search, you can look for commercial free images. It's still not guaranteed that that's a commercial free image.
Right.
Because what happens a lot of times is Google is showing an image off of my site, and I might not have any copyright statement or anything at all, but maybe I stole the image from another site.
Right.
And so you really, your best bet, honestly, is to go to a site like Pixabay that has commercial royalty free. Right. It's got to be commercial because you're using it for your business.
Well, and there's a distinction even on commercial of if you're going to be distribution as well.
Yeah.
But you're right. For most people, that commercial right to use is important, and you want to make sure that that's what you're using.
Yep.
And then beyond that, if you're going to be distributing them, and what I mean by that is like with our service, we buy images, pull images in, and make sure that our customers then have the right to use it. That's distribution, right? That you have a distribution license as well. And
the site that we buy from a lot is Deposit Photos, and it's overseas, so it's a lot less expensive. And the great thing is I have an audit trail. If anybody ever tried to sue me, I can show them exactly where I bought it
from here.
And it's not expensive. They have like monthly plans, so I don't know what ours is, $29 a month, and I never run out of, enough credits for that. So.
Right. So, all right. Very good topic there. Licensing in particular is good. Composition is important. Got anything else that we should probably talk about related to imagery and photography?
I'll throw on the licensing thing too, is a lot of those are single use too. And you got to be careful.
Right.
So if single use means if I shared it on a blog post, I can't share it
everywhere
else. And so you really want that royalty free, commercial use so that you can use it you can use it in your print publication, you can use it on the web, you can use it in, whatever you want to share.
Right. All right, great. Well, I think that's probably a good note to wrap up on. Austin, got any final thoughts?
Nope. I think Doug hit some really good points talking about licensing. When you are taking your own photos, I think one quick hint is to use the rule of thirds, which is basically just saying don't put your what you're focusing on in the photo right in the bullseye in the center. You want to put it either on the right third or on the left third, whatever's important in the photo, and it drives a lot of power into the photography that you're doing.
Right, and a lot of cameras actually have a mode where you can turn a grid on.
Yeah.
Basically, it splits the camera into thirds, both horizontally and vertically. And like for portraits, from what I've heard, and I've never done this, so I'm just gonna put something out there and act like it's the truth. Is to take and line somebody's face up on like where the lines cross on
Yeah.
a point where the lines cross, probably the upper portion, because otherwise it's just going to be a little neck and head in that photo.
Yeah.
But kind of line it up there on where one of those lines cross, depending on how you're taking the photo, because that'll provide a nice offset and balance to the image.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are taking a picture of someone and they're facing a certain direction, you always want them facing towards more room in the photograph, so it doesn't look like they're falling off the page. That's kind of goes with something called index vectoring.
Okay. So what's index vectoring then?
So it's basically just saying the index vector in this would be your nose if you're taking a picture of a person, and you want their nose to be facing in the picture where there's more room, because it just basically looks natural because they're looking off into the distance of more.
Otherwise, it kind of looks like they're running away from you.
Yeah.
Fleeing.
It just looks kind of awkward.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's the same thing with video. When you do video, you want people's dimensions of their facial features to show. Like, you don't want to have a point blank up front where like the nostrils you don't see the shape of the nose and stuff. You actually want a shadow, and you want.
Well, it adds depth
Yeah,
and texture and context to
Right.
the to the video in your example there, but probably the same in
Yeah.
photography as
That
well.
that was the awesome thing about the photography class that I took, was that so much with photography goes hand in hand with video. I mean,
So there you go. So now our imagery and photography and real estate is also videography. So we're just going to apply it to the podcast, to imagery, photography, and videography.
Okay.
Okay. Got any video tips, Doug?
Well, it's the same thing. You want to, with video, it's actually even a little bit more difficult. That every single platform has its own optimized settings for like how many frames per second,
Right.
what video types they like. For instance, if I outputted a video from my video camera and uploaded it to Facebook and uploaded it to YouTube, depending on what my settings were when I outputted that video, it might look terrible on one or the other.
Right.
And so a lot of times you have to pay attention to your export settings, and you might even have to convert the video offline to make it look really, really crystal clear, in those platforms.
Right. You know what? One of our next podcasts should be something along the lines of live video, like Facebook Live, YouTube Live, that sort of thing, and really dig into some of those, because I know that Facebook in particular, their live video is not actually high definition.
Well,
So
it's
720. It's not 1080.
Yeah, it's 720,
So-
and then a lot of, we got shook up by it, because the first time that we were uploading, it looked terrible.
Right.
Well, come to find out that live video at first does look terrible, and
Right.
they enrich it as you keep going. Their system is buffering, a lot of the pixelation and everything.
Right.
And so it's and that way they can quickly deliver it to everybody, but later on when you open the video and rewatch it, it looks a lot clearer.
Right. So we'll have to do a whole podcast on that. So, all right, great. Well, hey guys, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it. This has been Adam Small with the Agent Sauce Real Estate Marketing Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and review us online. If you want to learn more about us, check us out at agentsauce.com. Thanks and have a great day.